speak to you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, we finally made it to the Christmas season. We're on day 6. I'm trying to remember what day 6 is.
6 Geese of Lane.
6 Geese of Lane, thank you. I'm going. Anyway, about a week ago, I made mention of the fact that for many of us, this time of year means that we're on the road a little bit more than normal. I know that Davis, my wife, and I have been doing a good deal of traveling over the past week or so. And if you've ever been on a long road trip with someone, then you know that conversations tend to sort of range all over the place. And the same applies to me and Davis. While we were on the road recently, something caught our attention, and we started talking about the meaning of words and how people make sense of the connections that certain words imply. And that conversation got me thinking about today's gospel lesson, because the gospel lesson for today is very much about what words mean, or more to the point, what the word means. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Never go on a road trip with Robin Davis unless you're ready to And that's fair. But I think that what Davis and I wound up talking about is actually something that we all probably give some thought to and wonder about from time to time. Because if you're paying attention, if you've noticed, we live in a world that seems to be increasingly willing to say that words don't mean anything. Not only that, but we live in a world that seems to be increasingly willing to say that nothing has any real meaning. That everything is chaos, and all of the stories we tell to make sense of the world are nothing but empty words, strung together in a futile attempt to force reality to be what we want it to mean. And it's easy to see why the idea that the world doesn't make sense is so convincing. Think about just some of the headlines that have been in the news over the past week. We've got a volcano erupting in Indonesia, racial tensions on the rise in South Africa, violence popping up all over the place, especially in the Middle East, political unrest and distrust running rampant from Asia to America. Old systems and orders seem to be crumbling, with various factions and parties struggling for power to control the narrative of what is real. It's understandable to think that the world is so full of chaos that there is no narrative that we can use to make sense of it all. Or if we do have a narrative, that narrative can be pulled apart and picked apart so endlessly that it's then rendered meaningless. So here's where the gospel lesson offers us a ray of hope. The postmodern idea that there is no real meaning, no real truth in the world is actually not new. It's a philosophy that's been around for millennia under different guises. It's been there for a very long time. And it's partially in answer to that notion of chaos and meaninglessness that John's gospel begins with the famous lines. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. When John's gospel was written, what we have translated for us as the Word, in Greek it's logos, was meant to convey the idea of a rational principle or the creative plan of God that governs the world. So what John's gospel is claiming is that everything that came into being through the rational principle that governs the world. So what John's gospel is telling us is that the world was made to be intelligible, and that it's not just random chaos, and that we can make sense of the world that we're in. What John's Gospel is telling us is that there is a universal truth at the ground of all being. Now, if I haven't lost you yet, there's some really good news about truth at the heart of John's Gospel that I think we're meant to understand this morning. And it's truth that I think we all have at least some intuitive knowledge of. For those of you who are parents, I'm guessing that you can relate to the fact that you love your children or love your child. As frustrated and as annoyed as you might be on occasion with them, there is nothing that your child can do to make you stop loving them. You might even say that at the ground of all your interactions with your child is the unchanging truth of your love for them. But I'd be willing to bet that they don't always believe that you love them. There might be occasions when they are convinced that you don't care. There might be occasions when they test the limits of your love for them. But if you love your child, then your love is non-negotiable, no matter whether the child believes it or not. And yes, you might want them to understand that you love them, but whether they understand it or not is not going to change the fact that you love them in the same way. God's love for us is God's love for us, whether or not we believe it, whether or not we choose to order our lives around it, whether or not we try to dismantle the idea that there are such things as God or love. And don't get me wrong, this is a very bold claim. And it's a claim that flies in the face of much of the narrative of the postmodern world, because it's saying both that there is a truth at the heart of existence and that we have the ability to understand that truth. It's saying, more specifically for the season that we're in, it's saying that the Christmas story isn't just a made-up tale that we tell ourselves over and over again each year to make our lives appear to have meaning. Rather, it's saying that the Christmas story, whether or not we believe it, is the perfect expression of the truth that God's love, the love that has existed from the beginning and brought this world into being, that love has taken shape in this world. So if you're feeling like this season has been full of chaos and disorder, and you're beginning to wonder whether the story of the baby in the manger is just a fanciful tale that doesn't really mean anything, I invite you to ponder the deeper truth that empowers us all to believe or to doubt that the Christmas story has meaning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.